Cynthia Ng. This is AWANI Tonight. Political funding bill agreed in principle, says Prime Minister. And is abolishment of approved permits the answer to rising food prices? That's coming up. The Special Cabinet Committee on Anti-Corruption has agreed in principle to a political funding bill. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the proposal will be discussed with the Cabinet before further engagement with political parties are carried out.
In his statement, Ismail said the bill was important for the regulation and political financing and to avoid the risks of corruption and abuse of powers by politicians, which would negatively affect the country's image. Last week, the All-Party Parliamentary Group Malaysia APPGM on political financing had asked about the status of the political financing bill that was supposed to have been tabled 2 years ago. In the same statement, the Prime Minister also announced that the committee has also agreed to conduct a detailed study on the separation of powers between the Public Prosecutor and the Attorney General. The Prime Minister also said the committee agreed for the National Financial Crime Centre (NFCC) to be the central agency to manage properties and possessions that were seized and forfeited. He said it was important for NFCC to undertake the responsibility so that war against financial crime and leakage of government revenue could be prevented. The NFCC was set up in 2018 to fight money laundering activities. In the same statement, he also announced that a national plan on good governance, to be known as My Governance, would be introduced to further strengthen the delivery system in the public sector based on the principles of transparency, accountability, efficiency and effectiveness. A committee will be set up for the development of the plan, and the measurement of a government's agency governance quality will be done through the Malaysian Governance Index (MGI).
Is the MACC probe into Justice Nazlan Ghazali a form of intimidation of judges? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to our guests about the resilience of our judiciary. Malaysians' attitude towards living with COVID-19 is the reason behind manageable number of daily cases recorded recently. Health Minister Khairy Jamaluddin commended Malaysians as their actions during the transition to the endemic phase are described as very good.
In fact, he lauded the move by Malaysians who still wear their masks in open spaces. According to him, it shows that Malaysians have what it takes to excel through this transition into the endemic phase of COVID-19. Last month, Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said there could be a slight increase in COVID-19 cases after Hari Raya Aidilfitri celebrations, but would most likely involve less serious cases under categories 1 and 2.
The Health Ministry is studying a proposal to not allow the display of tobacco product brand packaging in line with the amendment to the Tobacco and Smoking Control Bill. Khairy said the proposal was for tobacco product to have plain packaging instead.
However, he said the matter required engagement sessions with all parties, including non-governmental organizations related to health and business premises. Khairy added that once the study is completed, the MOH will make a decision and transition towards the move. The Health Minister also explained that if the ban on tobacco product brand packaging be implemented, it will not be inserted in the bill, but the provisions will be in the rules and regulations that will be drawn after the bill is tabled. Previously, it was reported that the draft bill to ban smoking among those born in 2005 and after was in the final stages of reviews by the Attorney General's chambers and expected to be tabled in Parliament in July. Under the proposed act, children born in 2005 and subsequent years are prohibited from smoking and buying or possessing any types of smoking products, including electronic cigarettes or vape products, even after reaching 18 years old.
Approved permits or APs to import certain food commodities such as cabbage, old coconut, chicken and liquid milk are no longer required with immediate effect. However, the AP requirement for rice imports will still be in place.
The statement made by Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industry or MAFI follows the Cabinet's decision to abolish the APs announced by Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob yesterday. With the abolishment of the APs, MAFI said all companies were allowed to import agro-food commodities subject to the Import Permit or IP issued by the Malaysian Quarantine and Inspection Services Department along with the conditions contained in the permit. Mafi added although the APs were no longer required to bring in agro-food commodities from abroad, importers would still need to have IPs for biosecurity control purposes at the country's entry points.
The revocation of approved permits or APs for importing food items may help bring down prices of food to a certain degree. However, it is not the only solution for the government to combat rising food prices in the medium to long term. Dr. Juwita Muhammad, Director of the Economic and Business Unit at IDEAS, discusses the dilemma in controlling food prices.
When you think about what the government, not only the Malaysian government, but many governments in the region, to combat rising cost of living, we have introduced again subsidies and also price controls. And I would like to let everyone know that this is not free. It comes with a cost. Subsidies cost money. Price controls cost money. So in the short term, we do understand that this can remedy price hikes to a certain extent, but in the long term, the government needs to move away from such measures as, again, I mentioned, it is costly to the people, and it allocates resources away from the other sectors that are needing of reforms, for example.
With regard to the revocation of AP, Juwita hopes that the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industries will come up with a concrete guideline on how interested parties can enter the food items import market. This is important to ensure that the liberalization of the food market would bring benefits to the consumers moving forward. We'll continue after the break. Stay with us.
Jualan Riang Raya Maxis. Bawa pulang peranti idaman baharu hanya RM50 sebulan dengan Maxis Home Fiber hari ini.
Welcome back. Indonesia's palm oil export ban will be lifted on May 23rd. President Joko Widodo made the announcement today as the average price of cooking oil domestically has begun to decrease. Indonesia is the world's largest producer of palm oil. On April 28th, the government imposed an export ban on crude and refined palm oil products. The policy came after months of cooking oil shortage that led to prices of the commodity jump by more than 70%, which in turn affected prices of food. The lifting of the ban will bring relief to the global market after the war in Ukraine. Indonesia's ban was one of the biggest acts of crop protectionism since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which stymied exports of sunflower oil and worsened a global shortage. Sri Lanka fell into default for the first time in its history as the government missed payments on bonds worth $78 million. Its Prime Minister warned that inflation may worsen to 40% from 30% in April as the country struggles to halt an economic meltdown. Sri Lanka's central bank had flagged to creditors that the nation wouldn't be able to make payments until the debt is restructured and is therefore in preemptive default. This marks the nation's first sovereign debt default since it gained independence from Britain in 1948. The central bank said it will take at least 6 more months to start repaying its debts. It also announced the country will lower the amount of foreign currency people can hold. Sri Lanka has run out of money to pay for petrol, but the central bank said it has now secured foreign exchange to pay for fuel and cooking gas shipments until the middle of June. Russia's invasion of Ukraine could soon cause a global food crisis that risks starving millions around the world. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the war had worsened food insecurity in poorer nations due to rising prices. Russia and Ukraine produce a third of the world's wheat supply, and the loss of commodities due to the war has resulted in soaring food prices and uncertainty about the future of food security globally. Guterres warned some countries could face long-term famines if Ukraine and Russia's exports are not restored to pre-war levels.
But let's be clear, there is no effective solution to the food crisis without reintegrating Ukraine's food production, as well as the food and fertilizer produced by Russia and Belarus, into world markets despite the war.
According to the U.S. State Department, in 2021, more than 193 million people worldwide experienced acute food insecurity, an increase of 40 million people from the year before. As many as 40 million are projected to be pushed into poverty and food insecurity by the end of the year. U.S. President Joe Biden leaves for South Korea and Japan in a bid to cement U.S. leadership in Asia at a time where his attention has been pulled back to Russia and Europe. Biden's trip comes amid warnings that North Korea might conduct nuclear or ballistic missile tests around his visit. According to the U.S. National Security Advisor Jack Sullivan, intelligence shows there could be a North Korean nuclear test or missile test before, during or after Biden's trip. He touches down in Seoul on Friday and is set to meet newly elected South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol. While in Japan, Biden will also meet with fellow leaders of the Quad, an Indo-Pacific strategic alliance that includes Australia, India and Japan. The visits are being touted as proof that the U.S. is building on recent moves to cement its pivot to Asia, as China continues to flex its economic and military might.
Work together to secure the peace and defend our shared.
China's military assertiveness has grown over the course of Biden's presidency, with its provocative actions frequently putting the region on edge. But analysts say Russia's faltering invasion of Ukraine should give Beijing pause about its own ambitions in the Pacific.
The Ukraine crisis has awakened our allies in Asia, particularly Japan and Australia, but Korea, Singapore and others, to the global challenge and the global danger of recidivist, aggressive states attacking democracies. And so I think President Biden goes to Asia at a time when he can say, yes, we have a lot on our plate. We have to deal with the crisis in Europe, and we have growing challenges in Asia. But for the first time, really, in the post-war era, our allies in Europe and our allies in Asia are coming together and recognizing that we all have something at stake in a global challenge to democracies from authoritarian states.
Dozens of rare monkeypox virus cases have been detected in North America and Europe since it re-emerged in Nigeria in 2017. It is the largest outbreak in Europe, as more than 40 possible and verified cases were reported in Portugal and Spain, as well as the UK.
Monkeypox were first recorded in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the 1970s. Early symptoms of monkeypox include fever, headache, muscle aches, swollen lymph nodes, and chills. A rash that can look like chickenpox or syphilis can also develop and spread from the face to the other parts of the body, including the genitals. Most people recover within a few weeks.
That is all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.